Hello and welcome to our Explainer. Today we're diving into the life of one of history's most influential figures, Muhammad. We're going to look at the man, his message, and how he completely changed the world he was born into. So, let's get right into it. You know, it's a huge question. How does one single person manage to change the world? Well, for Muhammad, this story doesn't actually start with him. It starts with the world he was born into, a world that was practically crying out for a new direction.
The historical sources call this period Jahiliyyah, which translates to the age of ignorance. Now, this wasn't ignorance in the sense of, science or business. It was a deep, profound spiritual ignorance. And to really appreciate the light he brought, we have to first understand the darkness.
So our first section is a world in darkness, because Arabia at that time was right at the center of this spiritual confusion. The original simple belief in one God, which they had inherited from their ancestor Abraham, had been completely buried under this mountain of chaotic idol worship. But even in that environment, some people just knew deep down that something was seriously wrong. This quote here is from a man named Qasim ibn Sa'ida, one of the very few monotheists of that time. You can just feel the desperation in his voice, right? A deep, powerful yearning for a truth he was sure had to exist somewhere.
And this slide, wow, it gives you a snapshot of just how far things had gone. I mean, just imagine this. The Kaaba, the house built for the one God, was surrounded by 360 different idols. People had become so detached from the original faith that they'd literally chip off pieces of the sacred building to carry with them as little travel gods. And if they couldn't find a stone, they'd just make an idol out of sand and milk. That was the world Muhammad was born into.
But, in any time of great darkness, you always find these sparks of light, people who just refuse to accept the way things are. They were a small group, for sure, but they were so important. They were actively searching for that lost, original faith of Abraham. They were known as the Hunafa.
So what does Hunafa mean? Well, it literally translates to the ones who turned away. They turned away from all the idols, all the superstitions of their society, because they were absolutely convinced that there had to be a better, truer way.
And this slide tells one of the most incredible stories from that time. It all starts with a secret pact. So while the rest of their city, Makkah, is out celebrating a big pagan festival, these four friends meet in private, and they all come to the same painful realization. Our people have lost their way. They've totally corrupted the religion of Abraham. And that realization led to a quest. They made a vow, right then and there, to leave their homes and travel the world, each one on his own search for the truth.
Now, while some of his friends ended up adopting other faiths, one of them, Zayd ibn Amr, never found a path he felt was the original one he was looking for. So he just worshipped the one God of Abraham all by himself. He actually passed away just before Muhammad's mission began, and the Prophet later gave him this unbelievable honor. He said that on the Day of Judgment, Zayd would be resurrected as an entire nation, an ummah, all by himself.
So that's the stage, this huge spiritual vacuum. And onto that stage walks the man himself. An orphan who grew up to be a well-respected merchant, known everywhere for his honesty. He was already a man of incredible character, and as we're about to see, even his name seemed to point towards his destiny.
Okay, let's look at his names, because this is fascinating. Both Muhammad and Ahmad come from the exact same Arabic root word for praise, but there's a really beautiful difference. Muhammad refers to the quantity of praise, someone who is praised over and over and over again. Ahmad refers to the quality of praise, the one who gets the best, most perfect kind of praise. So his whole identity was tied up in this idea of being the praised one.
And people really felt this about him. This is an amazing testimony from Abdullah bin Salam. Now, this wasn't just some random guy. He was the chief rabbi of Medina, a major scholar. And he says the very first time he saw Muhammad's face, he just knew. He said, "This cannot be the face of a liar." His honesty was something you could just see.
And this story perfectly illustrates his complete lack of interest in worldly power. One of his closest friends, Umar, came in and saw him sleeping on a rough palm leaf mat that had left marks all over his side. And Umar just started crying, comparing his leader's simple life to the luxury of the Roman and Persian emperors. But Muhammad's response was so simple. He just said, "Oh Umar, aren't you happy that they have the dunya, this world, and we have the akhirah, the hereafter?"
So you have this man, praised for his character but living with such incredible humility. What was his mission? What was the solution he was offering to that age of ignorance we were talking about? Okay, This is probably the most crucial thing to understand about his message. He didn't see himself as creating something new. He saw himself as a restorer. His entire mission was about clearing away those 360 idols, sweeping away the superstitions, and bringing people back to that simple, powerful, pure worship of the one God, just like Abraham did.
And for a message that was meant to last for all time, his main miracle had to be different. A temporary spectacle, like splitting the sea, just wouldn't work. The sources describe his miracle, the Quran, as a living miracle. Why? Because it's not locked in a moment in the past. It's universally accessible. It's an intellectual and spiritual miracle that anyone, anywhere, at any time can pick up and engage with for themselves.
But beyond all the theology and miracles, the legacy that seems to have echoed the most deeply through the centuries is something really personal, really emotional. It was his profound sense of love and compassion for his people.
The Quran itself actually describes him this way. It says that it literally pained him to see his followers go through hardship, that he was always looking out for their well-being. For him, this wasn't just a job. It was a deep, personal, loving commitment to the people he was sent to guide.
And no story illustrates this love more powerfully than the traditional account of the Day of Judgment. The story goes that all of humanity will be desperately looking for someone to speak to God on their behalf. They'll go to Adam, to Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, but each one, worried about their own fate, will say, "Nafsi, nafsi, my soul, my soul." And then finally, they'll come to Muhammad, and he will be the one to step forward and declare, "Ana laha, I am for this. This is my job."
And this just puts everything into perspective. The sources say that every single prophet was given one special prayer from God that was guaranteed to be answered, no questions asked. And many used it for something in this world. But Muhammad, he chose to save his. He kept that one guaranteed prayer for the Day of Judgment to ask for forgiveness for his entire community. It's just the ultimate act of selfless love.
And that brings us to this final, beautiful teaching. A man once came to the prophet and said he didn't really have a lot of good deeds to his name, but he could say one thing for sure: he truly loved God and his messenger. The prophet's reply was so simple, but it has brought comfort to millions of people ever since. He said, "A man shall be with he whom he loves." It's just a beautiful universal idea that in the end, belonging and even salvation is all tied to the simple, powerful act of love.